Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AgilePoint's live stream event entitled Architecting for Adaptability in the Age of AI. My name is 𝗏𝗲𝗶𝗲, and once again, I am your host. During our first two live events this year, we established that business leaders want bigger returns from their technology investments, including AI. And this value is realized when we're able to advance beyond optimization of simple functional silos to full automation of complex cross-functional processes. We also gave a couple of product demonstrations to show how cleanly AgilePoint manages the complexities of cross-functional orchestration while also employing AI to automatically manage risk and optimize flow. Today, we're going to take a peek behind the curtains to explore the unique architecture that makes this level of complex agility possible. Specifically, our panel of experts from Analysis.tech and AgilePoint will shed some light on what it means to have an adaptable architecture and why this specific architecture is important for getting the most out of AI. Our speakers today are Rob Koplowitz from Analysis.tech, and from AgilePoint, we have our co-founder, Jesse Shiah, and US pre-sales lead, 𝗬𝗏𝗧. Since Rob is new to our live stream, I'd like to share a little about his professional background. Rob spent over 40 years in enterprise software with Lotus, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, and Forrester Research. He began his career as a Lotus Notes developer, which sparked his passion for low code. At Forrester, Rob spent 6 years running research for digital process automation and partnering on low code research. He is now semi-retired and occasionally consults on both low code and digital process automation. Before we get started, please note the following. This event is being recorded. Audience microphones are not enabled, so if you have questions, please post them in the LinkedIn chat. And then time permitting, your questions will be answered at the end of today's session. But if we don't get to your question, we will respond in a follow-up. Okay, with that, I'll bring our first speaker into our session and we will get started. Give me just one moment to make some screen changes. Okay, Rob, welcome. You are good to go.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks everybody for joining today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. This is a topic of particular passion. As Matt mentioned coming in, this is an area, particularly around what I would refer to as digital process automation, that I covered for about 6 or 7 years with Forrester. I retired about a year ago, and my partner and I, Ryan Duguid, began to spend a lot of time talking about this and what we think is missing from this space and what we think some of the potential implications around new technologies like AI will be. And you'll notice it says Rob Koplowitz and Ryan Duguid. Ryan unfortunately had an emergency and will not be able to join us today. So you got the less good-looking partner with the less cool accent. But I will do my best to cover the information that is a result of the research that we've done over the last several months in concert with AgilePoint and the team over there. So let's sort of step back for just a quick moment, because I think there's a piece that goes back 6 or 7 years, and I think it's really quite critical here. And it's around this concept of the crucial automation imperative. And we're going to dive into that a little more deeply in a moment. But throughout the course of this, we're going to talk about growth and change and agility, how AI is going to transform low code and digital process automation. We believe it will. And how you're going to have to go about meeting this large automation requirement, developing your strategy. We'll have a conclusion, and then there's some really great stuff that's going to come in the form of demos and some talk about the architecture that AgilePoint brings in order to really achieve these goals. So let's start with this concept that I like to refer to as the automation imperative. The new firm that I've been working in since leaving Forrester over the course of the last few months, Analysis.tech, uses this definition, and it's the necessity to digitize and drive existing business processes and functionality into an online managed platform at massive scale. It requires a fundamental shift from legacy automation tools and practices. And a critical element, this is very important, a critical element is deep involvement of business users that must become part of the organizational DNA. Let me just take a moment and unpack that. What does that mean? And why was it so important to me to put this out there? So when we coined the term digital process automation at Forrester a number of years ago, it was based on what we had been thinking about with regard to workflow process types applications. And those tended to be large applications. Think the term BPM. This came directly out of our BPM coverage, but something changed. And it's this idea that we have to move the things we do into this managed platform for the reasons of agility, for reasons of adaptability, in order to be able to respond to not only market situations, but things like COVID, where all of a sudden there is, a massive requirement for very rapid automation. And one of the things that we really became clear on throughout the course of that research was automation wins. Those who are more automated, more radically, more pervasively automated, are better able to react to things in the market, better able to react not only to crisis situations like COVID, but to things like opportunities that are now coming up around new opportunities with artificial intelligence. Taking your processes, getting them out of spreadsheets, getting them out of email, and getting them into online platforms that are throughout your organization is, we believe, an absolute imperative in order to maintain viability in the market over the next few years. So let's sort of set that out as kind of a thesis that we truly believe in, that you are all faced with this automation imperative. But how should you think about this? How should we really think about the way we approach this? Because there's a lot of different ways. I don't think you're going to get any disagreement from anybody in the market, and certainly not from any of the software vendors, that more automation is going to be a better thing. But where should you think about making that investment in this emerging long tail of automation? And I want to look at the left and say, what are some of the critical elements that you should be thinking about from a business perspective? We're going to get into a little bit more of the technical architecture during the course of this conversation, but I want to start off with what are some of the business elements that you need to really have top of mind. So starting off, we truly believe this needs to be something that is independent of the existing systems in your market and in your enterprise already. This is not about customizing things within your existing ERP system, within your existing CRM system, within your existing BPM systems that you have already in place. This is fundamentally different. And there's a couple of reasons why we feel it needs to be fundamentally different. And some of these are just good architectural judgment, right? So the more you go about customizing those applications, those large line of business systems, the more complex they become. It's expensive to actually do customizations in those systems. And then it becomes difficult to upgrade. These are just sort of like, we all kind of get and agree on these things. But it's really a much more powerful argument than that. And that is that when you talk about transformational automation, when you talk about actually moving how your business runs and operates and putting something onto a truly agile platform, these things have to be cross-organizational, right? Your processes do not respect your organizational silos. Your ERP system, your line of business finance systems interact with your customer-facing systems. They interact with your customer support systems. They interact with your logistics systems, with your supply chain systems, right on down the line. That's how your processes run. And in order to truly transform, we have to have something that goes across those organizational boundaries. Now, for better or for worse, we tended to make technology investments within departmental silos. We bought something for sales. We bought something for marketing. We bought something for finance. And that's great, right? Those things actually provided a great deal of value. Everybody was more efficient. Everybody in IT that put those systems up met their KPIs. They got their bonuses. but it didn't change how I do work because there was manual wait states that often lived between those different processes. So we want to be able to cross those organizational silos. That also allows us to cross those organizational barriers. The next piece that is so important is that these things need to be composable on the fly. Your business opportunities, your business's challenges change incredibly quickly. We're seeing that right now. They're changing with the introduction of so many powerful AI functions that are coming in to your enterprise, and probably coming in as little silos of technical debt that will live within your organization for a very long time. So we want to be able to say, this is the new opportunity. This is how we have to change things. COVID required that we no longer meet people face to face in our facilities. We no longer could pass paper back and forth. We have to refactor our critical processes. We saw this in government. We saw this in retail. We saw this in healthcare, across the board. And we have to do it in a matter of days. We have to do it incredibly quickly. So we have to be able to compose these things on the fly. Get back to the comments I made about, should we just do this within our ERP system? Yeah, give me 18 months and I might have something that'll already be obsolete by then. So we have to think about this very differently. And ideally, we want to think about this from a model-driven perspective. We want to be able to think about this happening not in a coding world, but in a model-driven architecture. So if you look at the kind of high level of architecture we have here, in the middle of these things, we've got databases, we've got CRM, we've got the things that are truly the lifeblood of our systems, and they're going to continue to be. And we're not going to take them out anytime soon, but eventually we will. These things continue to live within my organization. And then we have these new capabilities that are coming in the form of AI services. They're coming in the form of a lot of services that aren't necessarily AI. And what I want to be able to do is have an independent platform that lives between these worlds, that is future-proof, in which I can develop, compose, and orchestrate these processes in real time. So the business requirements are really quite different from how we've thought about things. It's nothing new from a technical perspective. We've been doing this for a very, very long time. And there are a lot of vendors that do this very, very well. Certainly AgilePoint is one of them. But really now doubling down on that application platform in the middle becomes imperative in order to really think about meeting that big, large-scale automation imperative that we talk about. I want to actually take a few minutes and dive directly into AI and low-code. Low-code is nothing new, right? AgilePoint's been around for a very, very long time. A lot of these low-code software development environments and digital process automation environments have been around for a very long time. They're extremely stable. I actually want to take just a parenthetical break and say, not only are they extremely stable, but during COVID, when we had to set systems up in a matter of days, mission critical systems in a matter of days, they were almost all built on these types of platforms. And the thing I often will go out to the audience and ask is, did you ever see one of them fall over? They didn't. They're really rock solid technology. And so they've been around for a while, but I think AI is going to change the bar a little bit. It's going to actually make things a little better. So what do I want to do from the current world I have, where I'm developing with these solid low-code process automation type environments, and move forward in terms of AI? Where AI is going to move the bar? So the big one, the first one, which we'll dive into a little bit more in the next slide, is this concept of AI design patterns. AI can build something that I tell it to build. It can understand best practices with processes. It can understand how to provision roles. It can understand how to provision screens. It can actually build an application, right? And that's actually really valuable, but I don't necessarily want AI to build my application because it's not going to meet the critical business requirements that I had on the previous slide. As we move to AI, that's going to get a lot faster and a lot more powerful and a lot better. And it's happening today. And there's already things that are in the systems today. Luke is going to give you a great demo later and talk about those types of things that are happening at AgilePoint. I want to be able to develop faster. You know what? Low code is already fast. It's going to get faster, but I'm going to say it goes from a green light to a greener light, right? We're going to be able to develop faster. But developing fast is already something these platforms are really good at, as well as developing less expensively. And this has been kind of the main sweet spot, right? Is I can develop faster and cheaper, but I want to develop at a much higher scale than I've ever done before in order to really meet that imperative. Is it going to lower programming skills? You know, I've had my hands on AgilePoint. It's a pretty easy development environment, but is it going to get easier? Are there going to be things where they can guide me more effectively, where they can give me a more fully baked application as a starting point? Yeah, absolutely. Goes from yellow to green. Is it going to support innovation? These platforms have always been around innovation because we can develop things very quickly. We do it in a situational manner. But when we think about AI coming into the fold, innovation is going to really take off, particularly as we start to think about consuming external AI services into this meta-driven architecture. Will it support business development? Yeah, there's some bits and pieces that are kind of hard and time consuming today. Certainly not like traditional coding, but will they get better? Yeah, they're going to get better with AI. And continuous improvement will be part of that, right? The ability to actually adapt even more quickly than we can today will get better. And this concept of a large number of small applications, we kind of think about things in two terms. One is the huge hero applications that drive your organization, and we really, you know, want you to think about those things differently in terms of doing them in an architecture that actually spans the breadth of your current investments. But also there are probably 1,000 things that are going on in your organization that are happening on spreadsheets, they're happening in email, they're part of your overall processes. How do we take those many applications and pull them into the fold? We think that's a core capability of low code type of solutions. But it gets even better as we move into AI. So if we think about things in terms of speed, adaptability, and really getting the business to participate and become partners in this concept of driving process optimization all the time, everybody in the organization, all of these things continue to get better with AI. So I want to kind of address the elephant in the corner here on the next slide, which is, aren't I just going to talk into a microphone and AI will build all of my applications for me? You know, isn't that the future of it? We're not going to have you're not going to have traditional coding or low code. It's just going to write everything for us. And the answer, I think, at least as far into the future as I can see, is if you're thinking about that, if you're thinking about making investments in that, if you're thinking about using that as your strategy, you are on a fool's errand, right? That is not how it's going to work. However, it's going to change a lot. I want to think about the things on the previous slide and then bring them to bear on this slide. So will I be able to tell a system, this is the type of thing that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to build a process for, you know, name your process. It's employee onboarding, you know, a relatively, you know, complicated application that we all deal with. We will, in fact, be able to derive what those best practices processes look like. We will be able to then look at those processes and say, is this how my organization does it? This is an incredibly important point I'm making here. I don't want it to build the application the way it thinks it needs to be built, which is not how my organization needs it to be built. I need to build it for my organization. I'm happy to start off with a best practice. I'm happy to start off with a starting point. We have very long used the concept of templates in order to give us head starts on best practices. These things will get better. They will provision something that looks like an application, but it will not be a finished application. And where we get very powerful and we start to think about the business requirements that were in the first slide, this is where I have IT, I have business stakeholders, I have governance, risk, and compliance, I've got my security team, all then looking at this application and say, how does this need to work within my organization? I'm validating the process. I'm validating the application. I'm doing this rapidly. I'm doing it iteratively. It is fundamentally different from the old world of systems requirement, 6 months of coding, a year of coding. Oh, you got it wrong, and the market moves while you're working on it. It's faster, it's more iterative, and it fundamentally changes the dynamic with the business and how the business interacts with automating and optimizing processes within my organization. So I'm iterating on the application. We finish the application. You'll notice it finishes in quotes because we never finish these applications. They are, in fact, future-proof. They are adaptive in terms of how they're designed. But we do deploy things into production, right? So we move from visualize to validate, to validating the application, to iterating on the application, to deploying into production. We think these things are all going to be fundamentally better and faster with AI brought to bear within the type of environments that we build and iterate on these applications with our business users. But I want to then draw your attention back to the lower arrows, because the lower arrows are where things get really interesting, which is we are continuously improving these things. We're continually bringing new services, new opportunities, adding capabilities, removing things that are turning out to not be valuable. These applications are incredibly agile. And Jesse will use the term future-proof, and we've stolen it from him because we love it. But as your opportunities change, that's where things really benefit from this meta-driven architecture that allows us to continually improve on it. You know, the thing that's going to continuously change at the most rapid pace as we move forward into this is this concept of AI services, right? So constantly these services are going to be coming into your organization. I'm putting across the top some of the things that are, fairly common today, and they're going to get a lot better as time goes on. But, we obviously are not new into the concept of chat and natural language processing being, a different type of interface for users and for building applications. We're not new to this concept of focused services. There are external services and internal services that you've built around things like, fraud detection and certainly things like credit assessments. We've done this for a very, very long time. We're deep into content intelligence, taking something that's unstructured and letting the system tell us what this is and turn it into something that's fundamentally more structured. Generative AI is doing remarkable things around content and certainly in processes. Developing content, generating content is often very important. But this is a list that goes on and on, right? Just let your imagination run wild. You're an insurance company, and somebody has built a computer vision driven capability that allows you to assess damage in a way that's, in some cases as good or potentially better than a face-to-face type of situation with a claims adjuster. I want to do that, right? I'm going to bring that into my organization. I'm going to bring it in as quickly as I can, but I don't want to bring it in as a little island of technical debt, right? So think about all these things that are happening in AI and all the things we could potentially imagine, and then compose them into a process, right? So the user comes in through a form, or they come in through chat. We have to make sense of something that they developed from a content perspective. We need to model it. We need to orchestrate it. We need to go into back-end systems. We need to make API calls to external systems, to internal systems. We're connecting the final product into a line of business system. A very simple, rudimentary, high-level process, but I want to be able to compose them into a process in real time through this architecture that orchestrates these outcomes. And that allows me to take these things that are in the top, that are emerging, and consume them into my processes, into the core of how I run my business, and do it all in real time and swap them in and out, and not have these little islands of technical debt that are constantly popping up. And you honestly are in danger of a lot more popping up a lot more quickly as people begin to make use of these nifty new AI services. I want them in the context of how I run my business. And that requires this concept of a meta-driven architecture and being able to pull these things in real time. So just a few comments before I turn this over to the AgilePoint team. I really do want to emphasize that everybody is facing this automation imperative, and I don't think we're making as much progress on it as we need to. And if you don't heed the call, you're likely to become irrelevant over time, right? Your inability to adapt to new opportunities and to challenges in the market will cause failure over time. The tools and the techniques to meet this, including in consuming these powerful AI capabilities, they exist. They're going to continue to get better. We're going to continue to iterate on them, but they exist today. These are not magic beans. This is very, very well proven technology. So So the last point I would leave you with is it is time to define a standard architecture right now that allows your organization to automate at scale and take advantage of not only what's existing out there to help you meet this automation imperative, but this amazing new opportunity around emerging enterprise capabilities. And to do this in a term that allows you to do, in a way that allows you to do this closed loop improvement that is continually improving your processes and never leaving you behind with technical debt. So with that, I want to turn it back over to the AgilePoint team.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Very nice job. And I've got to say that I think the clarity of your message is remarkable. And I appreciate that, because that's what we need as we're moving into this next phase, is understanding from a clear perspective. So thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Now I'd like to bring Jesse forward for a few minutes to illustrate how from day one, AgilePoint was architected specifically for this level of adaptability that Rob described. So give me just 1 second. I'll bring Jesse on. Thank you again, Rob. Okay, Jesse, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Matt. And I want to thank everyone for coming to our webinar today. And again, Rob, great messaging. And I know that we've been working for quite a few years when you were the analyst at the Forrester. And it was actually very interesting. I think you still remember, you mentioned about the future proof. When the local, this web for local started around 2015, 2016, we actually had a friendly debate for a few years, right, on this. And we believe that everything we're talking about today was actually have everything we discussed back then. Yes, local can enable us to create more applications faster, easier, and especially automation applications. But those applications created can actually become your foundation to enable transformation, or they just deliver some silo efficiency and productivity gains. And so this topic has actually becoming more and more important. And we have talked to a lot of digital transformation leaders. In a way, right? Everybody is started talking about we got a lot of silos, technical debts, and that's preventing us to transform. That also preventing us to adopt AI. So I'd like to share a couple slides before we to lead that into an actual live demo that Lucas is gonna be doing. So help you, to enable you to see what is the art of possible. And before I get started, I was, again today, unfortunately, Ryan cannot join us. And hopefully that next time we have another opportunity for Ryan to be with us together here. So at the end of the webinar, you will receive this white paper. It was authored by Rob and Ryan. And so you're going to get a lot more insight into what Rob is already sharing, is already shared with us today. So firstly, right, AI is coming. And at the same time, a lot of organizations are finding the AI developments or even just doing experimentations on AI is very costly, right? And the thing is, how do you make sure that now AI investments cannot lead to business outcomes? So more and more organizations are finding out the best way, one of the best approach to operationalize AI through processes. But the thing is, can you create process, especially end-to-end processes that can really maximize the potential of what AI could deliver? So that will be what we would like to explore into today. So here, just a lot of use cases, right? When it comes to automation, from task automation to process automation related to digital transformation. And I know that was a local, one of the key aspirations is to be able to engage, right, with business users. But so we mentioned that as the world become more dynamic, more connected, and when we apply AI, can not only apply AI to a specific silo or specific task or specific functional areas only. is that how are we able to apply AI to that more business critical, cross-functional, end-to-end, cross-organizational automation, because those drive the strategic business outcomes. But however, at the same time, a lot of we are hearing this, well, it's kind of very interesting when we actually, this is one of the slides we usually use when we talk to the tech leaders or digital transformation leaders. I actually quite surprised how many times I got, we were told this is a slide I like the most, because this really describe where they are right now. And it's just a lot of technical debt. This technical debt here is actually spread out in a lot of different corners, right? But sometimes we even were told that and say, we have all the platform here. They are all being rated as a leader on different analyst reports, but this is what we get to, right? But this is also where that, about one of the slides from Gartner, and that why only 4% of the company think they have the AI-ready data to be able to start leveraging AI in a business that would lead to the business outcomes. And again, borrow another slide here from the Gartner conference. And I think this really led to, right, in that when this was shown, it's really want to bring the leaders, right, the tech leaders to see that the CEOs are rating efficiency and productivity in the last place. Isn't that the top reason why we want to create automation applications? But at the same time, technology is on the second place on CEO's mind. And I think this is where a lot of, we are recognizing that AI could make or break a business, right? So really, right, how can we create automation that really is going to be able to enable us to drive transformation? But at the same time, how can that really leverage what AI could bring to us, right? So when it comes to, and this won't, when Rob emphasized the importance to make sure that you think automation, not just silos, right? Think about that as end-to-end. As a matter of fact, right, what is actually driving, preventing us be able to do end-to-end, the silos. However, the challenges become greater and greater because 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we suffer functional silos. That's organizational level. But then today, right, really, we are suffering also platform silos. There are a lot of really powerful mega platforms every company adopt. And now, with all the local no-code tools, we're creating a lot of application support, and all they also contributing to silos. But really, right, this gonna be, if we do not start thinking about a strategic platform architecture, we are gonna be continuing to bring in another silo, the AI silos that will be introduced by different platform vendors, different application vendors. So how do we, if we don't address that, right? And this is really where that everybody recognizes AI is gonna bring opportunities. But at the same time, AI is gonna bring threats, right? That's why we talk about the CEOs are really, many of them are really worried about what this will do to my business, right? And however, we have a lot of investments, right? Creating automation, maybe AI experimentations. But if we do not make sure that while all the investment here is gonna be able to deliver some impact here, then this is not gonna deliver business outcomes. And many times to be able to bridge that, right, is really that cross-functional, that end-to-end automations. So how do we architect an architecture that can really deliver future-proof adaptability, right? As Matt mentioned that AgilePoint, we actually got started in 2003, started architecting for this architecture, okay? And what we were actually eyeing at that time is this architecture should support if one day AI succeeds. AI needs to be able to dynamically adapt running applications, but without modifying code. So that was actually the essence of how we set our vision starting 20 years ago to architect. Okay, so here, I mean, we can look at every organization to really adapt a lot of, your current IT stacks, right? And for example, AgilePoint can collaborate, already support more than 100 of those systems here. But instead of creating application individually, right, in each one of them, an application ended up become very specific to a particular platform or particular automation tools, and you ended up leaving different corners or silos. So what the architecture does is brings in all the different application component assets from all this your IT stacks. And also maybe some of them are system records, right? Bring in the data and the data sources. Well, from this perspective, some organization may already build some kind of common data store, that's data lake or data warehouse. And that's nice to have to work with AgilePoint, but it's not required. So we can work with your legacy data sources directly. But from there, right, we are able to, so this architecture takes all these application assets, all the data and content assets through this abstraction framework. And this is where the IT pool will come in using AgilePoints to be able to start turning your ITS now into a metadata enabled. And I understand a lot of vendors are talking about we all use metadata, right? But it's really about the scope and the breadth and depth, how you support it. For example, many vendors will support metadata as a data model to bring in different systems. But what we do is not just data, we also do application logic, right? So bring all this API now become common representation in metadata. So from here now, everything above now, you're able to start compose applications, right? End-to-end processes. But now all this application now will be represented in metadata, right? And AgilePoint. So this really takes both metadata abstraction and model driven to enable that. But more importantly, right, we are talking about operation as AI today. A lot of process solutions will enable operations AI by inserting some AI into a process to enable the user to make decisions faster, more accurate, easier, or make one of the tasks easier, right? But the thing is, our business doesn't just run on one process. If I just put AI in one process, that's all AI can see, right? I put another AI into another process. Just like what we try to tell people every time we try to engage somebody to think more strategic, we also think outside of the box. So in that case, means that if I just have AI in each of this process box, they can only understand what's going on here. But our business doesn't run on one. A business function may rely on more than one process to work to be able to collaborate, to work together. This is where AgilePoint not only enable you to operations AI in process, but you can also do outside of the process. Because this AI now can actually monitor multiple different processes. If I have to make change here, then because I'm making that change, I also need to make change in another process because they are interrelated to enable to accomplish the strategic business outcomes. And this is really important, right? This architecture will provide that tier composability. Okay, so with that, right? So in a way, so how would that change? So instead of creating application, most applications are being enabled by code. Even that they say, local tools say I use metadata, but in the end, right, when you go to execution, that somehow get turned into a compiled code, right? But with this, AI can work with data coming out of the application. But however, if based on that now, AI say, hey, we could improve the application. That cost optimization is not easy to accomplish. As a matter of fact, this architecture, right, I think it's really led to a lot of organizations talking about we are suffering application sprawl, automation sprawl right now, because you're creating a lot of not totally non-related independent applications. But with the architecture we talked about, right, is that every application I compose on AgilePoint, they are represented completely in metadata. But there's no code generation, doesn't turn to compile codes. But the key is, if I can represent application all in metadata now, means that not only my AI can work with the data of my application, but from here now, if I need, I'll be able to, based on my analytics, I want to be able to improve, not just one application, but maybe more than one. I'm able to do that now because I'm simply adapting the metadata. So this is really where the cursor optimization. Or if you say, well, when we do this now, we still have to have a human in the loop, right? To ensure, to be a guardrails, to ensure, for that confirmation, this can also be supported. As a matter of fact, over the years, AgilePoint has been recognized as a BPM or low code. That was actually the key reason. One of the key reasons why we are more adaptive and more sustainable, because of this same architecture, right? So if we go back to what we were saying, that slide would say, so how can we really enable automation being created to drive, can enable us to drive transformation, but at the same time, we can leverage AI to help us do that more strategically. That's why cross-functional end-to-end automation can be created at scale. First, that's when we talk about how quickly we can compose that. But after that, that's when we can operationalize AI now through the processes. Okay, and this is really where the strategic, right, game-changing AI benefits could be derived to deliver that goal-driven strategic outcome, because every process drives our business goals, right? And through being able to do this, operationalize AI through processes, this is a way that you're able to really ensure that your AI investment can have, be able to lead you a business outcomes that can deliver impact, right? But it requires the process, the automation, especially end-to-end process automation, to be created in a form that it can really collaborate with AI, and even at runtime. So with that, I'm gonna stop here and turn this over to Lucas, so that Lucas can show us how you were able to operations AI through process today.
All right, thank you, Jesse. As always, we appreciate your perspective. All right, and our last presenter is Lucas Drege, who will give us a live demonstration of how easily AI can be enabled through AgilePoint's adaptable architecture. Let me just bring him on screen. Okay, Lucas, take it away.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Jesse. And hi, everyone. So I have about 10 minutes, and there's a few things that I'd like to accomplish today. First and foremost, I'd like to give you a sense of how AgilePoint supports this vision of cross-platform and cross-functional applications and automations. And we'll also give you a brief glimpse into some of the many layers of artificial intelligence that have been brought into the platform. Now, on that front, we're going to start with something a little simpler, a little more straightforward, and show you how AI can augment your application delivery process. But we're going to cap it off with something that proves to have tremendous business value. And that's really what Jesse was getting at. How can we use AI to improve, to inform, and adapt our processes and applications in real time so that they stay in lockstep with organizational goals? So with that being said, as we mentioned, we're going to start a little simpler on the AI front. And this is something that you may have seen either in the AgilePoint world or other areas, and that is using AI to accelerate the time to value for application delivery. Now, as you're seeing here on screen, there's a couple of different ways that I can choose to bring in AI for an application. During a past webinar, or perhaps some of the videos, you may have seen how we can choose the option to let AI decide. Now, that's where we would supply a prompt or a description of the application that we'd like to build, and the AI takes it from there and delivers us a fully baked application. What I'd like to give you just a brief perspective on is how we could, say, use a PDF as an example. Now, in my case, my design team has created a mock-up for an application using Figma and have exported this in PDF. Right? So as you're seeing, as I scroll through here, it's a fairly sizable interface. So the process here would be I upload this PDF into AgilePoint. It would then give me a series of fields to use for the app itself. Right? And from here, I can continue to refine. I can add new fields and recategorize them. But in just a moment or two, I end up with a fully functional enterprise application that is ready for use. So quick prototyping, short time to value, all of these things are really front and center here when we're using generative AI to create an application. But as I mentioned, this is basic stuff. We're going to scale up to something that has a lot more value to the enterprise here in closing. Now, the next piece that I'll touch on is how does AgilePoint support this cross-functional and cross-platform composability? So to illustrate this, I have an order-to-cash process. And when we say cross-functional, that means that it spans across different units or different areas within the organization. So if I'm processing a new sales order, it might start off with sales, flow through finance, legal, fulfillment, accounts receivable, etc. But at the top, you're seeing these two activities. These are AgilePoint AI extenders, and you can think of them as serving a supervisory sort of role, where they're looking for opportunities or risks to mitigate and will adapt the process in flight. So we're going to come back to that here in just a second. But for those of you that are new to AgilePoint, you might be wondering, how do I compose these sorts of things? And one of the main core tenets of the AgilePoint platform is abstracted and pre-built components. So in some cases, that might mean I need human input, right, to fill in data or capture an approval as an example, as well as more than 110 abstracted integrations into leading cloud and on-premises systems. All right, so the main driver here is abstract it, make it straightforward to use so that I don't need to be an expert, say in Salesforce, SAP, DocuSign, or AI services for that matter. So I can drag, drop, and configure to interact with any number of external systems. But coming back to these AI extenders here, what these are doing is looking for a couple of key stages in the value stream here. And again, looking to mitigate risks. So in the context of this order process, it's going to look for products that are in high demand, potentially export controlled, or in scenarios where there might be a delay in fulfilling that customer's order. Now, I've gone into a lot more detail on these in past sessions and past webinars, but I want to give you a quick sense of how someone who may not be technical can bring in these external algorithms and use it to inform how the workflow executes. So what I'm telling AgilePoint here is I want the algorithm to kick in at a certain point in my business process, and under specific conditions, reroute the workflow, optimize this, and improve the execution. So we're not just handing control over to the algorithm here. There's a lot of governance and control around when they're invoked, what they do as a result. But as you're seeing here, I'm passing various data points from my application over to the algorithm. So here are things like, is the product in high demand? Is it export controlled? And then when that condition gets met, I want AgilePoint to actually optimize and reroute this workflow. Right? So that's what you're seeing here. If something's in high demand or export controlled, I want to bring in steps that would otherwise not be required as a part of this process, perhaps to maintain compliance as an example. So what's actually going to happen here? Just give me a second while I bring up my PowerPoint. Is in scenario one, I'm going to queue up an instance of this workflow where I'm processing a sales order where the amount is less than $1 million. So in the typical process flow, we would go from the submission straight to fulfillment. But in the case that an algorithm detects a high demand product or something that's export controlled as an example, you're going to see this workflow optimized and adapted in flight. By that, I mean, it's going to invoke a swim lane that would otherwise not be required. We're going to skip the finance step and head straight to legal approval so we can have additional documents signed and cover ourselves from a compliance perspective. So that's algorithm one. Algorithm two, as we alluded to earlier, is all about ensuring we can meet our shipping SLAs. So here, the algorithm is going to look for things like the delivery date and SLA, the target destination, as well as shipping method, and make an assessment as to whether or not we can realistically meet our shipping timeframes. So that's algorithm two, and you're going to see that kick in towards the end of the flow. So with that being said, let's go ahead and run this application. And as we mentioned, this is an order to cash scenario. And what I've brought up here is a landing page for my order to cash process. Now, you're noticing some reporting here across the top, but where I'd like to call your attention is this center section here around the prediction score. So this is coming back to Jesse's earlier point around closed loop optimization. From an assurance point of view, right, essentially the probability that the model is correct, this is at 95%, which is essentially unheard of from an assurance point of view, right? And the reason behind this is this model was actually trained based on past AgilePoint workflow runs. So with that being said, let's jump into a new instance here. And I'm going to set up the scenario so that both of these algorithms kick in. Right, just to save some time, I'm pre-filling data. But one of the factors here is around payment terms and a VIP account. right? So in this case here, we're not a VIP customer. Our payment terms are a little further out than we might like. And from a product's purchase point of view, I know in my case that the cast iron electrode is both a product that is in high demand as well as export controlled. Under that $1 million threshold and ensure that our algorithms kick in correctly. But for now, let's go ahead and kick the process off. So if you remember from my slide deck here, the first algorithm kicks in almost immediately in this process. Oops, pardon me. So the normal flow for a sale amount under $1 million would again be to go straight to fulfillment. But in this case, being an in-demand product, export controlled, we're going to go ahead and bring in additional legal approval. So when I go back to my task list here, we should see a legal approval step waiting for us. All right, so there's our legal approval. And just so that we can follow along and watch the workflow execute, you'll see here from my model that we've submitted the first step, the workflow proceeded forward, but the algorithm has had to skip these steps here. So that's our first algorithm kicking in. And when I open up this interface, I'm going to have a big bold warning to my legal department saying, this is an export controlled product. It's in high demand. Let's go ahead and get additional approvals, additional documents signed so that we're covered from an export control point of view. Now, in just a second, when my tracker catches up, we're going to see the shipping details section. Here we'll specify things like the shipping date and SLA. And then finally, we'll apply order insurance, at which point our second algorithm will kick in. So if I go back and refresh things here, I have a shipping details step that's ready to go. So here I'm going to specify things like the delivery date, the target country as an example. So just again, to make sure that things kick in appropriately, I'm going to set a pretty aggressive delivery time frame. So as you're seeing here, it's going to take about 4 days, give or take, to ship this product. Coming back to our tracker, we're going to select our favorite insurance provider. And then after that, we're going to see the final algorithm kick in, recognize that there is a high likelihood for a shipping delay here, and actually reroute the workflow backwards. All right, so let's do a quick refresh of my task list. And again, here we're just applying some insurance details for our order shipment. So I'm going to go ahead and select my favorite here, Allianz. Who doesn't love Allianz? And then in just a second, you're going to see the workflow move forward. But again, the algorithm is going to kick in. There's going to recognize there's a very high likelihood for a shipping problem here. So it's going to route us back to the shipping details step and ask us to fix things like delivery date, method of shipment, and things of that nature. Right? So that's going to satisfy algorithm 2 here, bringing us backwards in the flow. So I know that was a very quick tour around a lot of the product. Hopefully that gives you a sense of how AgilePoint applications can be adapted and improved in real time, right? And what's most important is that that sort of AI extender, that algorithm that I've walked you through, can easily be repurposed, reused, and applied to numerous AgilePoint applications. Jesse, Matt, Rob, back over to you.
All right. Very well done, Lucas. And I want to say thank you for helping us experience AI in action, because I know sometimes these concepts can be difficult to visualize, but I think your demo made it very clear. So thank you, Lucas.
Thank you.
Okay. We went a little bit long. So normally this would be our Q&A session, but I'm just going to go ahead and skip us to the wrap up. All right. As is becoming tradition to wrap up, we'll look at another quote about the importance of taking action. The quote for today's event comes to us from Benjamin Franklin, and good old Ben says, "Well done is better than well said." We said a lot, and if some of it inspired you, I ask, what do you plan to do with it? Talking and listening is a great first step, but taking action is where the real difference is made. The most practical action you can take is to put your hands on the keyboard and experience the technology for yourself. And if you'd like to do that, you can scan this QR code and we'll be glad to help you get started. Or you might want to dig deeper and get some questions answered before you give us a try. If that's the case, you can use these QR codes to connect on LinkedIn with today's speakers. And that brings our session to a close. If you didn't capture the QR codes fast enough or want to revisit parts of the session, don't worry, a recording will be available through LinkedIn and it will be posted to the AgilePoint website. As well, for those who want to go deeper into today's subject, we're going to make sure that you have access to the white paper by analysis.tech. I'd like to offer a big thank you to our presenters, Rob Koplowitz from analysis.tech, as well as Jesse Shiah and 𝗬𝗲𝗍𝗍 from AgilePoint. And to everyone who watched us today, please accept my sincere appreciation for your time and attention. Until next time, keep healthy and safe.